As mentioned, my name's Yuseph. I'm not from this country. I'm from far north Queensland. I'm a Wutjisi person of the I can't even think of my totem. The Manta Ray Dreaming, sorry. And I have connections to the lower western parts of Torres Straits. I've been working for Newswalk for 9 years, so I've been in this position for about 2 months. Most of my time has been spent in the southern zone. Uncle Tom, I've worked with Tom Slocky for a little bit in the south coast and the Wiradjuri regions of the Land Rights Network. It was interesting listening to Luke's presentation this morning, or his keynote speech, because it dawned on me towards the end that most of us, most blackfellas in this room, have come from community or Aboriginal housing. There haven't been too many of us in this current generation that have come from private ownership. A number of us have progressed to that stage of private ownership, but I think we can all acknowledge how important, by that simple fact, how important housing is. When I was asked to present around housing and prosperity, sorry, I'm on another panel as well. Where my mind initially moved to is my past experience in community development, and Shane talked about we can get caught in operating from a deficit approach. In community development, particularly that pure type of community development, we talk about strengths-based or asset-based community development, not this needs-based type approach. So what Shane was mentioned earlier this morning really resonated with me. But in terms of my background in community development, where my mind initially went to was, which one? Okay. Right, yeah. Oh, sorry about this. It's gone the wrong way. So, right, yeah. So my mind went to a concept that about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So for those of you that know how Maslow's hierarchy works, it's a theory based in the study of psychology, and Maslow talked about what the human being needed to survive. And right at the bottom, you talk about the physiological needs, the basic needs around breathing, so forth and so on. But the next level up is around safety, and that's where I wanted to focus. And when we talk about safety, one of the concepts about safety and security is housing. It makes sense, right? And Maslow's hierarchy is used not only in community development, it's used in learning theory, it's used in management theory as well, because people, to be able to feel comfortable and to exist at a reasonable level, needs a level of safety and security. The UN uses these types of principles. It seems obvious, but going into disaster areas, the first thing UN disaster recovery teams look for is to be able to secure shelter. It does make sense, but it's based in theory as well. And it seems sort of abstract, but as mentioned, that's where my mind moved to. The other area is around the social determinants of health, the World Health Organization's social determinants of health. So what the WHO looks at is those conditions which people are born, grow, work, live and age, and the wider set of forces and systems shaping the conditions of daily life. So essentially what that's about is public policy, how public policy influences people's health and well-being. And that's what essentially we're in the market for. Making sure that Aboriginal people, that Torres Strait Island people, that sovereign people, their health and well-being are the utmost priority so that we can thrive and prosper. So what the social determinants actually mean is that your socio-economic status generally has a direct impact on your degree of health and well-being. And the two key determinants of your level of health is education and income. Now, I'll park that there, but I'll come back around to it as I go through. So one of the reasons why Newswalk was asked, I'm hoping, to talk at AHO's conference today is that we've been having conversations with AHO around our studies into social and affordable housing as well as home ownership. And what I wanted to do was just go through a couple of findings that Newswalk has, I guess, come across in terms of our study into home ownership. So I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. Home ownership is a key platform for social change and wealth creation. And we know that the Aboriginal participation rate as homeowners, as a percentage of the population of Aboriginal people compared to the broader community, is significantly lower. So if you add that into all the other statistics that we know around a younger cohort in terms of population per regional centre, we start to paint a picture. Low participation in home ownership has a flow-on effect to well-being of Aboriginal people, employment, health and continued cycle of poverty. So that links back to those social determinants of health, income, education. What Newswalk have found through our study is that the critical challenge in developing improved solutions for affordable home ownership is a catalyst of change. Again, we're not telling you anything you don't know, but we live in a world of evidence-based policy. Therefore, we've got to go through, do the heavy lifting and spend the money on these studies. So our observations to date is that demand for home ownership may not be driven by pure wealth creation strategies, but rather for security of tenure. So Sally touched on earlier about prosperity means different things to different people. Wealth means different things to different people. And Newswalk's study also demonstrated that pure wealth creation strategies, or wealth may be defined as a broader concept than financial security. Now, in the Land Rights Network, we've had to contend with, local Aboriginal land councils have had to contend with not only pursuing land rights in the sense of claiming land under the Land Rights Act, but assisting or managing housing on what we refer to discrete communities. Those former reserves and missions in New South Wales that were handed back under at the inception of the Land Rights Act. And in my 9 years with Newswalk, managing infrastructure, including housing, has been a significant challenge. And we all know that former reserves require major infrastructure development to increase supply. So in terms of affordability levels, they're impacted by generic lower than average wages of up to 20% in each region. Now, again, I'm not telling you something that you don't already know. When you go through each of the regions in New South Wales, what you'll find through particular studies is that there's not only a lower participation rate of Aboriginal people, but there's also a lower medium level of income from Aboriginal people. The only region where that was, there was a longitudinal study that was undertaken, and from memory, it's been a 40-year longitudinal study. The only difference there was in the region of Coffs Harbour, where Aboriginal people at that time, when they first started gathering baseline data, had, if not the same, higher than the average levels of income than the general population. That has now gone backwards as well in the most recent study. And one of the important points which we all grapple with is that the economics between rent versus buying may adversely affect affordability levels due to the add-on costs of maintenance rates and current low rentals. Now this is important in terms of Newswalk's study. In terms of the overall strategy around social and affordable housing being one step in a continuum on the pathway through different types of security and ownership and housing, one of the end games that Newswalk sees in terms of creating wealth is getting from the point of Aboriginal housing, community housing, social housing, to home ownership. But in the state of New South Wales, whilst we have the strongest system of land rights, not only in Australia, but from what we understand the world, being able to transition from renters to buyers is very difficult, particularly, as I mentioned before, around the discrete communities. Now, it's not only, I put up that point about current maintenance on many existing LALC houses would add a significant cost burden to the purchaser. It's not only about the maintenance, it's about all those other add-on responsibilities once you become a homeowner. So what we also did was spend money on what we called the subdivision project. And that was focused primarily on the discrete communities, because what we found in the LALC network was that townhouses or housing that is located in towns or regional centres, land councils found it a lot more or a lot less of an issue in managing. When it came to discrete communities, that's where the major challenges were, because you're generally looking at a number of houses being built on one single lot, and there's a lot of barriers that land councils face in dealing with those essential services, particularly from local shires. But as a background, there are approximately 61 discrete Aboriginal communities in New South Wales, managed by 49 land councils across 38 local shires. So what that means is that some land councils manage more than one discrete community. As in the home ownership, 2 minutes? Oh dear God. As in the home ownership study, what we found was that the state of essential infrastructure on these communities has been historically underfunded and exists in various states of order. A key issue is that discrete Aboriginal communities generally exist on single title lots, as I mentioned before, with all dwellings and infrastructure sharing the same lot and DP. That's part of the issue. In 2008, Newswalk entered into an agreement with the Australian government where we agreed to fund a subdivision project to the total of $6 million, splitting that half and half, $3 million of federal government money, $3 million of Newswalk money. Now, the stated objective of the program was to increase home ownership options for Aboriginal Australians, particularly in New South Wales, obviously in New South Wales, on discrete communities. Now, this came about because at the time there was the Indigenous Council established by the Prime Minister, and their focus was around Aboriginal home ownership being the entree to wealth creation. So we took hold of that theme and we looked at how we could apply it to discrete communities. Now, a number of barriers to subdividing discrete Aboriginal communities became apparent, which mainly related to New South Wales planning laws. So there's anecdotal evidence around how Shire councils treat Aboriginal land councils differently to other landowners. But that wasn't the only issue, and this is the point I was slowly getting to. Anecdotal evidence also indicated the economics of rent versus buy as a deterrent, as highlighted in our home ownership study, impacted significantly on in our subdivision project. Now, what does that mean in essence? Well, it impacts, when you move from renting to buying, it impacts on your hip pocket. It impacts on your hip pocket because you're not only paying for your rent, you're paying for rates, and you become responsible for all those other incidentals as well. So they were the key barriers, and we understand that. We understand the challenges that are faced through looking at home ownership. But we also understand the importance of housing to the human spirit. Wealth, as mentioned, means a lot of things to a lot of people, but what we understand is that it extends beyond providing just shelter. It provides a platform, it provides a foundation so that people can feel comfortable, so they can live in an uncluttered life. And I mean uncluttered because if you know where you're going to go home each night, if you know that your rent is paid, or if you know that your mortgage is being paid, that's one less thing to worry about. And that's why Newswalk, through our strategies, see the importance of home or home ownership or housing to being able to promote wealth, security, and a better way of living. Thank you.
Thank you. I just escape. If I touch computers, they die. So, thank you, Yuseph. It's a lot to squeeze into a very brief presentation, but I think that key bit around what many of us take as no-brainers, those add-on costs are the big barriers. But also, you know, that at the moment, the thing that jumps out for me is the issue around planning laws, Shire Council attitudes to land council properties and subdivisions is still in the realm of anecdote. So at the start of that, the whole notion around needing evidence-based planning, evidence-based data, there's a key gap for this whole topic about getting that, because at the moment, notionally, Aboriginal people are sitting on massive property wealth on one level. But it's only wealthy on the books, because if you can't even subdivide a plot to provide a number of houses or townhouses, it's a bit of a Pyrrhic victory at that point. So I think, you know, clearly there'll be key issues that come up. We've got time for one or two quick questions, if anybody's got anything for Yuseph. And I'm going to repeat your question so that they can hear it on the record. If that's on, or we could do the mic. Just do the mic. Thanks, Katie.
Hi. Just on your Maslow theory, did you do it on the current demographics across New South Wales and economics? And is that in an age group? And are you thinking about, Newswell thinking about the ageing demographics and economics too? Sorry, and I'd like to add, would that change that Maslow theory, the pyramid?
The Maslow theory is a theory that obviously people use in community development, and in my personal experience, that in the Aboriginal space, the regimented style of that pyramid, as you work up, may not necessarily hold true, because there's what I found in working in Aboriginal community development is that there are a couple of other factors involved. Therefore, Newswalk hasn't used that theory. Our studies have been general studies on the current population, and we haven't. And this is our study is an interim study. We've still got another report to complete. What we will start to focus on is those individual sort of age groups, because as we know, we generally have a younger population under 25. That's where most Aboriginal people sit, and then we have, like you mentioned, the ageing population as well. There's very the middle part is very disproportionate to the young and the ageing. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Cool. Thank you. One more.
Thanks, Yuseph. I just wanted to get a sense of what was the home ownership success rate from your subdivision project. I understand, was there any correlation between the number of properties you were able to subdivide leading to home ownership?
Well, if we can turn the camera off. Look, it's part of the reason why I use terms like anecdotal information or evidence is that it wasn't a great success, and regardless of what we could capture in studies, what we found on the ground is that people aren't willing to talk about openly why land councils may not have moved to agreeing on subdivision of discrete communities. In the land rights system, before, if people don't understand it, before a land council can move to the process of subdivision, the members have to agree to that. And that's where one of the stumbling blocks were. Land council membership generally did not agree to it. And did not agree to it because anecdotally, or behind the scenes, there was that hip pocket issue. That people are struggling already. We understand that. Low incomes, sometimes, no opportunities for employment. And that's the other fundamental key around home ownership. Mm-hmm. To be able to purchase a property, you need a source of income. To have a source of income, you need generally employment. In a lot of areas, we've recognised that the rural and regional areas are dying. It's not a black phenomena, it's a statewide phenomenon. So when you move to looking at home ownership as an entree to wealth, it gets very difficult in those regions where there's no economy.